Bullying and changing culture useful tools.
Hi, I've done videos before about bullying, and this one's about bullying and tactics to use, tools you can use to combat bullying. So I showed one of these once to an executive, and he said, "Oh my gosh, my wife bullies me." Um, so yeah, everybody bullies. That's just the way it is. There are some cultures that bully less than others. There are cultures like South Korea works avidly in their culture to not have bullying. Denmark, Finland, they all do a lot to stop bullying within their companies, within their families. So that's the first thing. There's no culture that doesn't have bullying. There's no relationship that doesn't have some bullying. It's back and forth usually in relationships, but we're talking about company bullying. But if you take this home, I understand. Um, so the most basic form of bullying is a tactic, an action, or even sometimes as subtle as body language to try and lower someone else's self-esteem. And that is really detrimental to the other person. It's detrimental to the company. It destroys teams, and it has sometimes some really bad reasons for it. So there are two concepts here that most people don't know, but we're going to develop them real quick. And I'll tell you an example. I was talking to this guy who was 30 years a paramedic, and but his body language is neutral. His conversations were nice and neutral or happy. He was a validator, it's called. And you just walk away from the conversation going, "Oh my God, that was such a great conversation," right? And he'd learned over 30 years of seeing every tragic thing, how to control his body language and his language, and how to be positive when he talked to people. And it was just amazing. So the first is a validator. What is a validator? If you walk away like I did from this conversation and you thought, "Wow, that was a great conversation," that person's probably validating you. Now that can be a ploy to bully in a way, in the sense that some people are over. It's called over positivity, over happiness. That can be a ploy to get you to do what they want. So that's the first one. The second one's called an invalidator. And invalidators are negative comments that are used to try, comments or body language or whatever, used to try and lower your self-esteem so that they have control. And that's the two basic definitions of validation and invalidation. Now, I can help you find a subconscious way to look at invalidators. If you walk away from a conversation, a meeting, whatever, and that person irritates you, now there are some other reasons besides invalidators, but if he irritates you or she irritates you, it might be because her language structure or his language structure is an invalidators and it's bullying. Remember, invalidations is trying to lower your self-esteem or try and get control by various means, and I go through them all. I go through a lot of them. So that's basically where we're at, is the best basic definition. Um, so there's two other points we need to understand here. And the two other points are validators and invalidators are learned from their parents. Generally speaking, they either do it on purpose, in which mentally ill people do it on purpose, or they get it from their parents. The parents did it to each other, the parents did it to you, did it to them, or whatever. So it can be very much a subconscious thing. In fact, if it's done really smoothly, it probably is subconscious. I'll give you an example in a minute. But you have to understand that subconscious is not usually devious. The conscious person who does it, the person who does it on purpose, is usually devious. And I talk in another video later about how psychopaths and stuff use this tactic. Now, then you have the mumbler. You hear the mumbler. They'll say something negative under their breath. Usually it's not positive, it's something negative, and they mumble it. And mumbling in some people is a mental illness, an emotional illness sign. But some people, it's just a way that they used invalidators. Their mom would say something and their dad would mumble, "Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah," right? So they learned that tactic. And so the way to deal with most of these concepts of bullying, almost all bullying, is be direct. Say, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Now, if it's subconscious, they won't repeat it. If it's conscious, they know you caught them and they won't repeat it. If they repeat it, then you need to deal with that piece of information, whatever it may be. And being the most direct you can is the best. It also is good because it brings out the mumbler. It brings out people under their breath saying negative things. It brings out, and I'll tell you, the major factor here, major factor in all these that I have, is that by knowing, I'm going to say it again, by knowing you're being invalidated, you've won, because it pulls the power out of the invalidation and allows you to address the problem. So the moment you recognize these invalidators is the moment you've won. So this brings me, the CEO was a famous mumbler. She'd say really harsh things under her breath. And their HR director, who is by far considered an expert in her field, she was standing there listening to her, and this the CEO says, "Well, I thought you were an expert in this," just like as like a mumble half comment. And she actually is an expert in what they were talking about, but the CEO was incorrect, and she wanted to have what's called strategic patience, which means you wait to say something until it's time to say something. So she was using strategic patience. Now, this person turned out to be a narcissist and emotionally ill, but it was a good way to deal with, what did you say? I'm sorry. What did you say? And then she wouldn't repeat it. And she said, so then she couldn't just drop it. She then said, I heard you say that you're supposed to be an expert in this, and I am, and we can talk later about why that's not a good idea. So that was a great way to deal with the mumbler, the famous mumbler. Now, I talk about this later, but one of the other tactics is to just own up to whatever they're saying if it's true, expose it if it's not true, especially when invalidators are being used, but don't let it affect you. And once you know that they're there, they don't work. But you can often ask them, hey, could you repeat that, please? I don't think I understood you. And then if it's conscious or if it's a real point, they're going to say it again. You could also say, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Let's talk about this matter for a minute. That'll help you. That'll help you, especially if you look confused. That'll help you get through to them as far as the invalidator. Another one is to repeat back what someone says. You can say, I'm sorry. This is what I understand you're saying to me, and then repeat it back. And then see if it makes them sound ridiculous too, if you can. But make them understand how they're coming off, because some people don't understand that they're coming off a certain way, and that's an important point for that tactic.